Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's edition of Plugged In with Paulsons. This is our free monthly webinar series. And this month, we're so excited to bring you a couple of our near and dear friends from the McIntosh Labs group. So Ken and Evan, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Ken, would you go on to the next slide for me? All right, so again, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. First, we're going to just go through some quick introductions. We'll introduce ourselves as Paulsons in case you are not fully aware of everything that we bring to the table, or even if you're a long-term client, we have some things we'd like for you to keep in mind today. Some of the new and noteworthy products that Macintosh is going to be talking about is the MB20 Bluetooth transceiver, some integrated amps and receivers, our home theater processors, and then we're also going to hear a little bit about the exciting launch or relaunch of the Macintosh Automotive partnerships, which it's been about 20 years since something like that was going on. So we're very excited to discuss that as well. At the end, we will have Q&A, but if you have questions along the way, please don't hesitate to drop those into the chat box. Whatever device you're on, it should be down towards the middle of your screen and it looks like a little speech bubble. Ken, will you move me forward? Thank you. So today we have Ken Zelin and Evan Grimm from Macintosh. Ken is the Director of Training for the Americas, and Evan is our Regional Sales Manager for the Mid-Atlantic. So he is our go-to partner for all things Macintosh, and Ken is working with us on a regular basis to keep us up to date with the best knowledge and education around everything these wonderful products can do. Go ahead and move forward there. So Paulson's AV, we have Dan Paulson on the call today. So Dan is one of our owners, and then his brother Chris is another one of our owners, and Dad Ken as well. So we are your local AV smart home experts, all things fun and functional for your home. We can do that. So we've been family owned and operated since 1992, coming up on 30 years next year, which is so very exciting. And a couple of things that we'd love for you to take away from the conversation today. When it comes to Macintosh, we're your go-to folks. So obviously we have the resources in Evan and Ken and the rest of the Macintosh Labs family to find that perfect piece or that perfect collection of pieces for whatever you're trying to accomplish in your space, whether it's home theater or just a killer listening area. You know, if you want to kick back and just let the world fall away with that perfect audio experience, Macintosh is definitely one of the brands that can deliver that, and the folks at Paulsons can help you find those perfect pieces. So if you have questions about Macintosh, please always think of Paulsons first. Come in, see us, test drive some of it, touch, feel here, and we'll get you set up and taken care of. Another thing that's interesting that not a lot of people know, we've started touching on, is that Macintosh has rack-ready products for new builds. So some of our new builds have a little bit more structured way that they put in AV and smart home components, and there's cabinets and there's all these different things. So Macintosh offers stuff like that too, that is, you know, space saving, and that, you know, some people like to put it on display and know that a Macintosh person lives here when they walk into their home, and some people like those things hidden. So we do have some cool options for that. So if you knew someone who's building, renovating, we have lots of great stuff. And then the last thing is that, as always, financing is available. So nothing is out of reach, even the high-end, high-quality, legendary performance of Macintosh sound. So with that, Ken, I will turn it over to you and Evan to take it from there. Get you off mute.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Ken Zelin, as was mentioned. I'm relatively new with Macintosh. I started getting involved with them in 1972. So I'm Director of Sales Training, and I talk about new products and get everyone up to speed, and I want to do that with all of you. So we've introduced a whole bunch of new products this year, and I want to run through what some of them are all about. The Macintosh factory is actually working on weekends. We've got people working overtime. It's absolutely incredible. Like I said, I've been involved with Mac since 1972, and I've never seen anything like this. We normally have lots of product in stock, and right now we have essentially nothing. There's a 2 to 3 month wait for most products. Luckily, they're worth the wait. So We've got very, very tight quality control at the factory, and we don't want to loosen that up at all. So we'd rather have people wait and have a Macintosh product that's built the way we want it than rush production, because everything's handmade at Macintosh. One exception is the MB20, which I'm going to tell you about. So this product, here we go, is brand new, and this is not built in the Macintosh factory. I'll say that right off the bat. This is built for us overseas. Why did we do that? Well, it sells for a very reasonable price, hundreds, not thousands of dollars, and it has lots of little parts inside, and we really didn't want to have people wait for amplifiers to be produced because we're building Bluetooth receivers. You know, we had a choice. What should we do? Have it built in the Macintosh factory and have amplifiers on more back order, or should we have this built overseas? So it's built overseas for us, but we designed it. So what is this? It's a Bluetooth transceiver. It transmits and it receives Bluetooth. The first thing I'll say is anyone who thinks Bluetooth can't sound really good hasn't heard this. I'm on the Macintosh Facebook page, and so far, every single person who's bought one of these has just raved about it. So it is designed to go into any system, including a vintage system. So here's a Macintosh ML1 speaker from 1970. We've got it sitting on one. This is the perfect way to get music streaming from your phone into your Macintosh system very, very easily for older systems as well as newer systems. Now, some people don't like Bluetooth because it has a short distance. This is a different type of Bluetooth. This has 100 feet potentially of distance capability. So when you're streaming from your phone to one of these, or from one of these to another one of these, you can go up to 150 feet, and that covers a lot of homes. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So let's say you're having a party and someone's got some music on their phone and you want to play it through your system. They can very easily pair their phone to the MB20. You get music through your system. But the key is we're not having to give away our network password. See, Bluetooth does not go through your network. So when you've got guests coming over, or maybe you've got kids and they've got friends who like to come over and listen to their music, you don't want to be giving away your secure password. There's no need to do it here. They just press a button on the front of it, their phone pairs, and they can listen through the hi-fi system to music that's on their phone. Inside of this, we specified 32-bit DACs, 192 kilohertz processing. What does that mean? Well, the potential sound quality of this comes awfully close to a CD player. And that is awfully good indeed. So the old sound that you might have been used to with Bluetooth, which is kind of like you're talking into a Folgers coffee can, that's all gone. This sounds absolutely incredible. Distortion and noise are as low as a fine preamp CD player or streamer. So we have previously unobtainably high performance on a Bluetooth box. So there's a switch on the back, and this can transmit or receive. You might say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, I'm going to give you some examples. But let's take a peek here. We have balanced inputs and balanced outputs. We have unbalanced inputs and unbalanced outputs. We have optical and coaxial digital inputs and optical and coaxial digital outputs. So basically any type of connectivity you could ever want for any system. And that thing in the middle is the Bluetooth transmitter receiver. Okay, so how would we use this? Well, here's one use. So we've got a vintage Macintosh system on the right, and we want to send music to it wirelessly. We want to start our streaming. So you take your phone or your tablet or your computer, you go to your favorite music source, whatever it is. I use Qobuz and Deezer. There's lots of others out there. And you can now stream music into your system wirelessly. So you can be sitting across the room or outside. You can control the music. You can control the volume. For any of you who have never done streaming before, it is just incredible. You say, I'm in the mood for Joni Mitchell, and you type her name in, and every single album she ever recorded is showing up on your phone or your tablet, and every song, and you can listen to songs and discover new songs. When you like a song, you create a playlist and you make it a favorite, so you can refer back to it at any time. These music streaming services are typically under $20 a month and allow you to listen with an unlimited amount to basically any recording ever done. I mean, it's a bargain. Okay, here we've got someone with a state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line Macintosh system on the left. They've got a vintage Macintosh system in another room on the right. Well, we've got the turntables on the system in the left. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to listen to records in the vintage system without having to invest in a separate turntable and two sets of records? Well, we can put a transmitter on the left system and a receiver on the right system, and now it's like we've run a wire from one system to the other system. In some homes, running wires is easy. In some homes, it's not. And this takes care of that problem because it's wireless. Oh, here's another good example. Someone in the family wants to listen to TV and their hearing isn't as good as it used to be. So they want to get a pair of Bluetooth headphones, but their TV doesn't have Bluetooth built in. No problem. We connect the digital output of the TV into a transmitter. That transmitter sends the sound to a set of Bluetooth headphones that they put on. And Bluetooth headphones always have volume controls on them, and they can be listening screamingly loud if they want, and they won't drive everyone else in the house crazy. Here's another good example. So we've got a beautiful Mac system in one room, but you've got some Macintosh streaming music systems in other rooms. We make this cool piece that you see on the right, and that can be used as a sound bar. So we can, let's say you've got a TV in the bedroom, you want better sound from it. You love your Macintosh Blue meters. So the piece on the right, the RS200, you can just set down under your TV on a table, hook your TV up to it, and it has fantastic sound. Inside that box are a pair of mid-ranges, a tweeter, and a woofer per channel, and hundreds of watts of power inside. It's an incredible sounding piece. But it's also a Bluetooth receiver. So here we're transmitting music that's playing in the main room to the room that has the TV, but we're listening through the speaker to music. This is a nice one. We've always wanted music outside. Well, years ago, that meant, a keypad on the wall and volume controls all over the place. Those days are over. So now we simply take an MB20 Bluetooth receiver and connect it up to one of our new 8-channel amplifiers. And we could have 8 speakers outside all around your kidney-shaped swimming pool that I'm sure everyone has. And now we can turn on our phone. We can take the music that's on our phone, send it to the MB20 and hear it on all the outdoor speakers. When you want to adjust the volume, right there, you just use the volume control that's on your phone to adjust the volume. We don't need in-the-wall volume controls anymore, or even keypads or anything like that. So this is a pretty useful device. That's a little close-up of all the inputs and outputs. It's got a black glass top and an aluminum chassis. It's built like a little Macintosh. And again, this is built overseas for us, so we can keep production doing amplifiers and things like that. This is available now. They're on back order, as everything is, but we're getting them in as fast as we can. So right now there's a 2 to 3 month wait, I think, on it. And that covers that piece. Now, let's see. I want to go back, and this may take me a moment to figure out how to do this. We want to get out of this. And let's see. I might need assistance on this. Oh, I know what I do. Here we go. So I want to talk a little bit about integrated amplifiers. So an integrated amplifier is a preamp and an amp in one. It's kind of like the old-fashioned receiver. So years ago, you used to buy a receiver and you plugged your sources into it, like your turntable and your tape deck and a pair of speakers, and you were off and running. Today, we see a lot of systems with separate amps and preamps and DACs and all of that. Well, we still sell lots of integrated amplifiers. And in fact, integrated amps right now are one of our best-selling categories. And the reason is Macintosh has always called their integrated amps Rolls Royces for half price. So an integrated amp, by combining the preamp and the amplifier into one piece, we have a big advantage. And that advantage is that we're not doubling up on a lot of parts. So you're not paying for 2 owner's manuals, you're paying for 1. You're not paying for 2 shipping boxes and 2 faceplates and 2 volume controls and 2 power switches. So this is where the control section and the power section are together in one piece. Okay, let's see if I can minimize this. There we go. Okay, a little bit clearer view now. So I want to talk about our integrated amps because we make so many models. I'm on, as I mentioned, Facebook all the time. And the most common question I get is, what's the difference between all your integrated amps and why do you make so many? So why we make so many is pretty easy to answer. I've been involved with a few manufacturers over the years, and most manufacturers buy chassis from one company, typically in Asia, and then they buy faceplates from another company, almost always in Asia, and then they buy circuit boards from another company, and they put that together. Macintosh is totally different, and we've been totally different right from the start. We don't buy chassis. We buy sheet metal, and then we cut it, and we bend it, and we paint it, and we silkscreen all the lettering. In fact, we just created a whole new paint system. It recovers something like 99% of the paint that doesn't go on the unit. So it's really cool. The paint is electrostatically charged, and the chassis that we're trying to paint is electrostatically charged, and all the paint gets sucked right into every nook and cranny on the chassis electrostatically. But any that doesn't go to the chassis, doesn't fall down anymore, it's all recovered through this air system. We don't buy circuit boards pre-stuffed. We stuff our own circuit boards. All the little parts that are put in, all the little transistors, capacitors, we put them in ourselves. We don't even buy faceplates. We buy sheets of glass and cut them and paint them and build them from scratch. So since we do everything ourselves, it's easy for us to have many, many models, each slightly different, so we can fulfill the needs of a great many people. And if we need to run off a small batch of 50 faceplates for a certain model, we can do that. That's no problem. If we were buying that from some other company, they'd probably have a minimum order of 1,000. And of course, then everything changes. So I'm going to run through our line of integrated amps because it's such a popular thing. And there's so much confusion over what does what because there's so many models. So the 5300 is the start of the line, and it has 100 watts per channel. And that's a nice amount of power. That can run the majority of speakers for the majority of people in the majority of homes. Distortion, we can't even measure it. We say it's under 0.005, but we don't really know exactly what it is. This has all our special features to protect you and your speakers. It has Sentry monitor in case you ever short the speaker wires accidentally. You don't have to run to Radio Shack for fuses, which is good since they're out of business. And it has Power Guard. And Power Guard is in all our transistor amps. And Power Guard means that if you overdrive the amp, it doesn't distort. And that's important because it's distortion that hurts speakers. So this has got our watt meters that everyone loves. They're very useful, but let's face it, they look cool. And that's why most people want them. It's got an input for a turntable, and it's got our DA1 DAC module. Okay, what in the world is Ken talking about? So this has digital inputs. Why do we need digital inputs? For your TV. You might want to take the sound, even this is not a home theater product, this is stereo, but you likely want, if your hi-fi system is in the same room as your TV, you might as well plug your TV through the system. Judge Judy sounds better when your system is connected to your TV, but movies sound dramatically better. You really hear the orchestra. Let's say you've got an older CD player. You can plug your older CD player into this digitally, and now it sounds like a really good new CD player because the sound performance is determined by the digital inputs on this. Now, here's the one problem some people will say about putting digital inputs into an amplifier. Amplifiers are close to being perfected. Digital seems to improve every few years. Would that make this out of date? Potentially, yes, but that's why we call it the DA1 DAC module. So the whole digital section of this is on a module that slides out with the removal of 2 screws. And when technology improves, you plug in a new module. And this is a fantastic feature. It would be kind of like having a car where you want it to look good year after year after year, but each fender on the car was removable with 2 screws. So that if you got a little fender bender, you just order a new fender, 2 bolts, and your car looked like new again. Wouldn't that be nice? So the digital section is removable. And a lot of people are using headphones. So we developed what we call high drive. It's a super high performance headphone amplifier circuit that's built into this. The best part is on the back, and I have it kind of squared off in red. That's the preamp output, power amp input. Okay, what is Ken talking about here? Well, the sound of this is fantastic. I mean, it's hard to outgrow the sound. It has lots of inputs on it. It has lots of flexibility. So what does it lack compared to our bigger amplifiers? Power. Maybe you want to buy a new house that's bigger and the listening room is much larger, or all of a sudden you fall in love with a pair of speakers that require more power. You don't have to trade this model up. It's got jacks on the back, so you can add more power to it. I mean, the sky's the limit. We make amps up to 2,000 watts of power. So if you get a pair of power hungry speakers, you kind of get hooked on hi-fi with the purchase of one of these. And then in 5 years, you want to buy some power hungry speakers and you go back to the store and they say, 100 watts was enough for your old speakers, but we'd like to see you have 300 watts. You just buy a bigger amp and you hook it up. You might say, if you want to play devil's advocate, but Ken, aren't I wasting the amp that's built into this? Nope, use that for running speakers in another room or the kitchen or outside. Put some speakers around that kidney-shaped swimming pool that everyone's got. Bass, treble, balance, level, naming, this is all on the remote control. We got rid of a lot of knobs on the front with this model to give it a clean look, but you can adjust everything by remote control and you can rename your inputs. They don't have to say CD2 or unbalanced 1. You can say Macintosh CD player. You can put in Nakamichi cassette deck. You can rename things. Now, this is a feature on almost all of our products now. A lot of our customers have a dedicated home theater system and a dedicated 2-channel system. The 2-channel system is for music listening. The home theater is for watching movies. Now, as good as we make our home theater products, and we make some great ones, and we're going to talk about them, the 2-channel product still sounds better for music. That's because home theater systems have very complicated microprocessors in them that take the sound and divide it up to as many as 14 speakers. And pure 2-channel listening doesn't need all of that. So a lot of customers who are very fussy, and I'm talking, that upper 3%, 5% of customers, they want 2 systems, a 2-channel music system and a movie system. But if they're in the same room, you really don't want to have 2 sets of speakers. So we have something called pass-through, and no one else in the industry has this. It enables you to have a home theater system and a 2-channel system in the same room, share the same amplification for the front speakers, and share the same left and right front speakers. And yet each system works independently. They talk to each other, and I'll just simply say it makes operation a breeze. I won't go into more detail. You can go into the store and they can tell you all about it, but it allows you to share products and not complicate the system operation even 1%. It's just incredible. Now, 200 watts per channel is the amount of power that I want to see everyone have if I had my choice. And the last model we looked at was 100 watts per channel. And why do I want to see everyone have 200 watts per channel? Because 200 watts can drive essentially any loudspeaker ever made. I mean, not in a gigantic room and not at shockingly high volumes, but 200 watts, I've never heard of a speaker where the manufacturer said you needed more than that. So the 200 watt per channel amp category is always our most popular. And because of that, we actually make 2 200 watt per channel models. One has the radio in it because a lot of people still listen to the radio for news, the ball games, sometimes music. I mean, if you're in Chicago or in New York, there's still some great FM stations, maybe not in other parts of the country, but I still like to listen to the news in the morning. So one model has an AM FM radio built in and the other model does not. These get you into what I call the club. So what's the club? So to be in the club, you've got to have 200 watts per channel, and you have to have output transformers. Both of these models have that. So if you look at the back of the speakers that you own right now, they probably say something like 4 ohms or 8 ohms. So occasionally a speaker will say 16 ohms on it. Every speaker has a different number of ohms, and it's not better or worse. 2 ohms, 4 ohms, 8, 16. There's no better, there's no worse. They're just different. And every amplifier puts out its maximum power into a different number of ohms. Some amplifiers put out a lot of power into 8 ohms, but they've got a warning sticker on the back, don't connect it to 4 ohms. Some amplifiers put out a lot of power into 4 ohms, but then they only put out a little bit of power into 8 ohms or drastically less. So we have something that no one else has, and that's called an output autoformer. And it's the simplest thing in the world. On the back of these, there's connections for 2 ohms, 4 ohms, and 8 ohms. So you just look at the back of your speaker, you connect the speaker to the right terminal, and you get all the power you paid for. So I always require, and the club is something I invented, so I get to set the rules for the club. For the club, you've got to have 200 watts per channel. You've also have to have output autoformers. That allows you to buy any speaker you want and always get full power. And once you're in the club, you're set pretty much for life unless you get the itch to upgrade. But you'll probably never have to upgrade. Getting in the club means you can actually cross upgrade amplifier off your bucket list. It's a wonderful position to be in. So when you go out to buy new speakers, and some people buy speakers every year, some people buy new speakers every 10 years. If your salesperson is really good, as soon as you say you're looking for new speakers, they're going to say, aha, before I show you any speakers, what amplifier do you have? Well, let's say you bought one of these. So you're going to say, I have a Macintosh MA8900. It has 200 watts per channel. It has Sentry monitor, so it'll never be damaged if I ever accidentally short my speaker wires. It has power guard. So if I overdrive it during a party, it won't send distortion to my speakers and hurt them. And it's got meters so I can monitor the power coming out of it. The salesman's going to say, oh boy, that doesn't help me at all. I was hoping we'd narrow down the choice of speakers, but with that amp, you can power any speaker that we sell in this store. That's just such a fantastic feeling. That's what being in the club is. You can power any speaker that you ever desire for the rest of your life. Doesn't mean you couldn't have more power, but no speaker has a minimum that these amplifiers don't provide. And these are our 2 top-of-the-line amplifiers. These get you into the club and the club next door. So these have even higher power, 300 watts a channel and 350 watts a channel. Now, they also both have an 8-band equalizer. So that means you can take old recordings. You can pull out that recording of Diamonds and Rust that's from the, I guess, from the 70s. That was a fantastic recording, but it really lacks richness to the voice. But it has great clarity, and you just turn up the control that says 100 and the control that says 200, and all of a sudden it sounds like a state-of-the-art recording. So these 2 amps are quite high in power, 300 and 350 watts a channel. But you'll notice the one on the right has 4 green things behind the faceplate, and those are tubes. Tubes are getting more popular every year. People are discovering that tube amplifiers and preamps have a warm, rich sound that's difficult or impossible to duplicate with any other method of amplification. And you could have a tube preamp or a tube power amp. Well, I've always said once you have tubes in your system, you've got tubeliciousness. It can be in the preamp or it can be in the amp. Once you run music through a tube, it just seems to sound better. And you might want to know why, and there's a very simple answer. No one really knows. Every expert has a different answer as to why. Why does San Marzano tomatoes seem to taste better? We don't exactly know why. We can try to grow San Marzano type tomatoes in California, and we can take all these chemicals and put them in the soil. And so we have the exact same composition and they still don't taste the same. So we don't really know why tubes do all of what they do. But the model on the right, the MA12000, is a tube line stage preamp with a phono section and immense power, 350 watts per channel in one big box. And that piece has taken off. It's actually, I believe right now, our second best-selling integrated amp, despite the fact that it's the most expensive, because it's what a lot of people have always wanted. A Macintosh with a big fancy equalizer on it, tons of power, handles, and a tube preamp stage. Oh, there's a close-up of the tubes. I forgot I had that. Now, these are kind of interesting. So these, at first look, you'd say, well, those look a little bit wacky. Why do they look like that? Well, we came out with the MA252 because a lot of customers were going into our dealers and saying, I love Macintosh. I've always wanted Macintosh. I wish the point of entry was a little bit lower in cost. So how are we going to build a unit that's lower in cost? Well, we could have it made in China. No, that's not going to happen. No, a Macintosh amp is a Macintosh amp. We're not going to do that. We could give it less than 100 watts per channel. No, we don't want to do that. We don't want to build an amp where you've got to upgrade the amp really quickly. One thing we can do is make it look like this in the style of our classic tube amplifiers that we built in the 50s and 60s. And that's what we've done here. We took this basic chassis of an old Mac tube amp and put a brand new design into it. Why does that lower the cost? Well, very simple. If you look at this, there really is no faceplate. There's a glass window with a display. The thing looks absolutely cool. I've had customers who've always told me Macintosh isn't their cup of tea visually because Macintosh has a distinctive look. And look at this and say, now that is cool. I think they call it steampunk or something like that. It's very trendy. So this is a beautiful, shiny chassis. It looks like chrome. It's actually polished stainless steel because chrome pollutes when you produce it. So this is a polished stainless steel chassis. It's 100 watt per channel amp, and it's a tube preamp. So it's got the tube preamp like that really high-end MA12000 that we looked at before. So it shares something with our most expensive amp. So we came out with this a few years ago. We expected it to sell well, and it didn't. It absolutely took off. This was our best-selling product for about 6 months. In Europe, it's gone completely wild because in Europe, they want something that's small. And normally we don't build things that are compact. This is narrower than normal. They love tubes over in Europe, and they wanted something less expensive because everything, all Macintosh costs more over there. So this has been a huge success for us. Now, notice it looks very retro. There's no digital section in it. This is pure analog. You want to hook up something that needs a digital to analog converter? No problem. You just buy a digital to analog converter. There's zillions of those available. So this is a retro piece. It's got a headphone jack, a phono input, plenty of extra inputs, comes with a remote control. You can rename inputs. It's got bass and treble, plenty of features. So this is our entry-level integrated amp. This was so successful that Charlie Randall, president of Macintosh, said, let's come up with a bigger version of it. And that's the unit you see on the upper right. It's the MA352. So let's put a few extra things in there. Let's double the power. Let's put our equalizer in it, and let's add meters. And Charlie said, you know, this kind of interferes with the sales of our other integrated amps because it's a little higher, and he wasn't really sure if it would sell. It's our most popular integrated amp now. It's selling so well. So this retro look is kind of, it's a new in thing at Macintosh. In fact, we have a whole bunch of models. We even have a CD player now in this style. People look at it and they don't even know what it is. And I say, it's a CD player. And I've had one person in a store say, that's cool, I want one. I said, do you own a lot of CDs? He goes, no, I don't own any CDs, but I want one. It looks so cool. So both of these have a tube preamp stage. The power stage is solid state or transistorized. They're pure analog, and they've got a headphone jack and a phono input. And the power on the one on the right is double at 200 watts per channel. That's that magic amount of power that in an ideal case, I like to see everyone have. It also adds the meters and the 5-band equalizer. The equalizer is great for older recordings, imperfect room acoustics, or older speakers. And you might say, Ken, why does someone have older speakers? You know, a large percentage of the people who I've spoken to over the years don't come in and buy a whole new system all at once. They'll come in and say, my amplifier is out of inputs or it stopped working. My speakers are still working. I just want to upgrade my amp today. I'd rather someone keep their old speakers and get a Macintosh amp that they'll be able to have for potentially the rest of their life than buy a whole new system of good stuff. Better to buy fewer things and great than a whole lot of good. I call a whole lot of good kind of like the all-you-can-eat McDonald's meal. I'd rather have one great thing to eat. And what other differences between the two models? More inputs and pass-through. Pass-through is going to allow you to, again, share the speakers with your home theater system if you also have a home theater system in the same room. Okay, so that is probably everything you ever wanted to know and then some on integrated amplifiers. Okay, so let's go back to this. And now I want to talk about home theater processors. And home theater is gigantic. Sales of home theater products is absolutely huge. Macintosh got into home theater right at the beginning. We were, in fact, the first company to have a complete THX home theater system. And we make 3 home theater processors. And I constantly get calls from people saying, what's the difference between our home theater processors? Let's see if I can get out of this so it's not in the way. And there we go. Okay, so we make 3 home theater processors. I'm going to try to take everyone through these so they understand what the difference is. And we're going to start with the MX123. So the 123 is traditionally our most popular home theater processor. And it has a zillion HDMI inputs. Well, maybe not a zillion. Maybe it's what, 7? It has a lot of HDMI inputs. And HDMI is what everyone's using, the new cable boxes. Everything is HDMI. It has composite and component video inputs. So what's that? Well, there's different types of people in this world. One is the person who stays state of the art, and the other person is kind of like my mother was. My mother couldn't throw away a mayonnaise jar. You know, that might be useful someday. Well, if my mom had been an audio enthusiast, she would undoubtedly still have her B&O turntable and her Nakamichi cassette deck and her TIAC reel-to-reel and her Betamax and her VHS and her Laserdisc. Well, there's still a lot of people who have all these things and they still want to use them. And that's not my cup of tea. I'm a throwawayer or a recycler, but this still has input so you can connect all those, what I call legacy products through your system. So it's got composite and component inputs. It's got inputs for all those analog sources also. Those reel-to-reel cassette decks and 8-track players that you still got that you want to connect even though none of them work. So if you've got a whole lot of analog stuff, this has inputs for a turntable and a tuner and a whole bunch of other things. It has 4 digital inputs. So that would be where you hook up your CD player and your music server and things like that. It has a lot of outputs. So you can add Dolby Atmos. So what's Dolby Atmos? A lot of people ask me what that is. So Dolby Surround, when it originally came out, was left and right speakers. They added a center speaker and they added 2 speakers on the sides of us to envelop us in sound. Then Dolby Digital came out. And with Dolby Digital, we could have speakers up front, speakers on the side of us, and speakers behind us. And that's 360-degree sound, but it's still 2-dimensional. We still don't have height to the sound. Dolby Atmos, which is short for atmosphere, adds speakers above you. So speakers in the ceiling, or you can use speakers that reflect off the ceiling that are placed down low. But now if we have speakers above us, the plane can actually sound like it's going overhead. With Dolby Surround, when the planes go from, in front of you to behind you, our brain says, okay, planes are up high. This sound must be going overhead, but the brain is working overtime. With Dolby Atmos, we actually have sounds that go from the front to the back overhead, and our brain has an easier time. It sounds more relaxing and more realistic. So that's Dolby Atmos with speakers above us. And you could use 2 speakers above us. You could use 4 speakers above us. So this has all the outputs for all the channels 99.9% of the public is ever going to need. This also has 2 extra zones built in. So you might say, well, I've got a kitchen nearby the home theater. I'd like to have speakers in the kitchen. And maybe there's another room, maybe the master bedroom. So with this piece, we can hook up speakers in 2 other rooms and listen to music. It has a balanced input. Those big jacks with the 3 prongs, I talked about this in our last seminar, I think. Balanced cables are cables that are essentially immune to noise. And this is an input that you can use for balanced cables. And I always encourage everyone to use those when possible. It's got a pair of antennas because this has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built right into it. And this is the ultimate feature that I don't know anyone who uses, but someone out there must. This is a 7.1 channel input. So you might have heard of most people used to have a CD player. A few people listen to SACDs. That's super audio CDs. It's like a better sounding CD. And when SACD first came out, they thought of doing it multi-channel. So music all around you. Those of us who are my age remember quadraphonic sound. This is kind of like quadraphonic sound done digitally. And this is the input for that one person somewhere in each state who still has multi-channel SACD discs. Someday I want to hear one. I heard they sound fantastic. Included with all our home theater processors is a full-size mic stand. And this is really important because these processors tune themselves to your room acoustics. And occasionally I hear people say, yeah, I tried doing that, and I don't know, it didn't sound that good. And I say, well, how'd you hold up the microphone? Well, I propped it between cushions of the sofa and propped up the microphone with a Hellman's mayonnaise jar. Well, that's not going to work. You've got to place the microphone on a mic stand where your head would be in your best listening and watching position. So since we know no one's going to go out and buy the true metal mic stand, they're going to continue to use the Hellman's mayonnaise jar, we decided to include it. So we include, believe it or not, a full-size metal mic stand in the box with every home theater processor we sell. And this home theater processor is made by Macintosh. It's made in New York. Now, the video switching board, the HDMI board, which also contains the GUI. The GUI is the on-screen menu. We import that from another company. We share that with another company because HDMI boards take about 40 engineers to engineer, and we don't have that 40 engineers to spare. So the video switching board and the on-screen menu, if you ever get a Mac MX123, you might say, hey, that looks suspiciously familiar. It looks like one of my friend down the street who's got a home theater receiver has a similar menu. Yep, might be. But everything that affects the sound or performance of the unit is made by Macintosh. So we build 80% of this unit. It's either 80 or 85%. The remainder comes from this other company that we share technology with. Well, this is a new Macintosh product. I told you it's going to talk about more new products. This is our new home theater processor, and we're really proud of it. This was my idea, so I'm really proud of it. So I thought, just for fun today, I would share with you the presentation that I made to Macintosh, because I wanted us to come out with a less expensive home theater processor. And every time I brought up the subject, Macintosh said, what qualities are you willing to sacrifice? And I said, I don't want to sacrifice any quality. And the engineers kept saying, well, how are we going to make it less expensive? So just for fun, this is what I presented at the Macintosh engineering meeting. At the time, our most popular processor was the MX122, and I wanted us to create an MX102, a less expensive one. As you can see, the model numbers changed. We now produce the 123, and the new one's called the MX100. But this is how the process was. I said, this is what we're producing today. And if we look at the back panel of it, there's a lot of people who need all these jacks, but there's a lot of people who don't. For most people, 4 HDMI video connections is all they need. One for the cable box or the satellite dish, one for the PlayStation, and maybe one for the Blu-ray player. That leaves an extra one. So we can reduce that down to 4. How many inputs do people need? It's time for them to get rid of their 8-track player. So this has analog inputs for a turntable, an FM tuner, and still 2 tape decks. I think that's enough. Component video. How many people use component video? That's a Laserdisc type of thing. How many people are still watching Laserdiscs? You can stream all those movies. Don't mean to upset Laserdisc owners. If you have a Laserdisc player and you love it, that's great. But the average person coming into a store today doesn't own a collection of Laserdiscs. And in fact, they probably don't even want to connect an input to the balanced input. That's probably not necessary for most people doing a home theater. And remember that 7.1 channel input for those people with the surround sound SACD discs? I've never met one. There's one out there somewhere. Let's take those jacks off. If we take all those jacks off, we might as well take off the composite inputs. Those are the ones for VCRs. How many people still have VCR tapes? I think anyone who does, it's probably just tapes for the kids to watch. Well, it's time to buy Wizard of Oz on a DVD or a Blu-ray for them. And this is what I came up with: a much smaller rear panel with fewer jacks on it. And I named it the MX102. And that's my proposal. 2 knobs and a power switch, and fewer jacks, but still have everything everyone needs. And I wanted it to also be rack mountable. So here it is in reality. The front of it looks almost identical to what I came up with. Let's just take a look at what it actually looks like. That's it. They moved the knobs on me. That's okay. Theirs looks better than mine did. And let's take a look at the back of it. So this is the perfect unit for someone with no analog baggage. What's analog baggage? The reel-to-reel, the cassette deck, the turntable, the VCR, all of those things. This is for someone starting fresh on a home theater system who doesn't have a whole lot of old stuff. So this has 4 HDMI inputs. It's got 4 digital inputs. It's got a network connection, and it's got a whole array of balanced outputs. Remember, these are those cool jacks that prevent noise that I want everyone to use. So this gives up nothing. People say, does it sound as good as the more expensive MX123? It sounds just as good. It just doesn't have as many gazintas and goes-outas, as I call it. It's just got the modern jacks on it. And it comes with rack ears, so it's really easy to install and super simple to use. So it's a no compromise in quality, substantially less expensive home theater processor for people without a whole bunch of old equipment that they want to hook up. And this is doing really well. We can't build them fast enough. Will it eventually become our best seller? Maybe, but at the moment, we can't build them fast enough, so we don't know how well it's going to sell. Right below it in the picture is our new matching 7-channel home theater amplifier that we have to go with it. And below that is an Atmos amplifier if you want to also add speakers in the ceiling and you need more channels. So we've covered 2, our most popular, the MX123 and the new MX100. The one that I came up with the design for. I didn't engineer it, got to admit that. I just conceptualized it. And this is the MX170. And this is king of the hill. This is our best home theater processor. And this, you don't set up using an on-screen menu. You don't hold up the remote. With this, you type in onto the IP address of your laptop computer and you set it up completely on a laptop. It's so much easier. I've had a few people say, oh, that's scary. I got to use my computer. Oh, no. In 5 minutes, I'll have them going and they'll say, why doesn't everyone do this? Setting up and adjusting a home theater processor on a laptop is 10 times easier than using a remote. In fact, my new MX100 is set up the same way using a laptop. But what makes this so special is it has room perfect in it. So what's room perfect? Well, almost every room has a boom in it at some frequency. So there's some pitch, usually in the deep bass, where the room kind of goes crazy. You could say it goes into resonance. And it causes bass to sound like it's one note, like someone's banging on a cardboard box. And almost every room has these resonances. And what does it do to? It's due to the dimensions of the room. So if you give a physicist or someone really good at math the height, width, and depth of your room, they can come back and say, well, you're going to have a peak in the bass at this frequency, that frequency, and that frequency. And I know this for a fact because years ago, we had a customer at the store I was working at, Danny Pereira, lived in Fall River, Massachusetts, who listened to a dealer who told him that the perfect room was a cube. It would have the same height, width, and depth, which meant that all three resonances were at the same frequency. And when he installed his system, it sounded so bad, you couldn't believe it. Macintosh had to build a special filter to reduce that frequency. Once we did that, the room sounded fine, but he had a real problem. So if you're building a room, make the dimensions all different from each other. Okay, so we've got a room and it's got three peaks in the bass, three frequencies or pitches where the sound is too loud due to the height, width, and depth dimensions of the room. Most room correction circuits measure that and then reduce the sound volume at those frequencies. Well, that works, but Room Perfect takes that 20 steps further. You actually set up the microphone in your favorite listening position. It measures your room and it says 5% room knowledge. It now knows you have three problems in the bass. It tells you to move the microphone. So you move the mic off to the right side of the room, remeasure the room. It's got 12% room knowledge. It tells you to move the mic again, put it behind the sofa, put it under the table, put it on the left side of the room, put it up high, put it down low. Eventually, after maybe a half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, this is well worth the time, and the dealer usually does this for the consumer. Eventually, it's going to say 92% room knowledge or more. At this point, it now knows that the boom in the bass is caused by maybe it's the front right speaker and it's booming into the left rear corner of the room. So it reduces the amount of bass that speaker is putting out, not all the speakers. So when it gets done, all the speakers have linear response. In other words, every speaker is putting out the right amount of sound into the room at every frequency. And it does this even for your ceiling speakers. Room Perfect is the best room correction system that we know of in the world. And it has Room Perfect carries a price of about $2,500 per channel. So if someone says to me, oh my God, this sounds like just what I need, but I don't have home theater. I wish you made it in a stereo 2-channel device. We do. And it sells for a little over $5,000 because Room Perfect is $2,500 a channel. So a stereo system is 2 channels, that's $5,000. We add a faceplate to it, a power cord and an owner's manual, and that costs a little bit, so it costs somewhat over $5,000. The amazing thing is the MX170 has inside Room Perfect for every single channel. And that's a lot of channels. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16. So this has got Room Perfect for every channel. And if you add all that up, you'll get scared. Don't worry, this doesn't cost that much. That's what makes this amazingly good value. So this sells for more than the other 2 processors, but this is the device when you've got a room that's not perfect, which is essentially everyone, and you want your room to sound like a theater that's been tweaked and tuned by a professional. With Room Perfect, we can make almost any room sound good, and we can make rooms that already sound good sound spectacular. Just a quick review. This has a whole bunch of HDMI inputs. It's got a bunch of balanced inputs. It's got all balanced outputs because we want you to use those big connectors whenever possible to reduce noise. It's got 9 digital inputs. It's got basically more of everything on it. The only thing it lacks is legacy video inputs. It doesn't have jacks for that old VCR and that Betamax, but most people who buy this don't care about that. So the MX170 is our very best home theater processor. So we really have 3 products, and they're really geared to, I have to say, 3 different people. This is the audiophile who also wants home theater, who's very, very fussy about the sound. And then we've got the MX123, which doesn't make every room sound like a recording studio, but it sounds great, it's high performance, and it's got all the legacy jacks for that customer who's still got all those older components. And then we've got the, what I would consider the my first Macintosh home theater processor, the MX100. Who's going to buy this? Well, maybe a young couple, they don't have a VCR. They've got a satellite dish and maybe a PlayStation, and they want to do a home theater and they want to do it with Macintosh. And this gives them a much lower point of entry with, I want to stress, 0 lack of performance. It only lacks gazintas and gozautas and doesn't have as many knobs and things like that. And let's see. I think we covered everything I was going to cover. Oh, we have one more subject. So years ago, Macintosh was owned by 3 people. Morris, Gordon, Sidney, Frank McIntosh. It was owned by 4 people. And Gordon Gow, who ran the company, passed away, and his business partners were seniors. Some of them wore hearing aids. None of them wanted to be president of an audio manufacturer wearing a hearing aid. So Macintosh years ago was sold. And when it sold, it got into the hands of Clarion. Clarion being the car stereo people. And of course, a lot of dealers and consumers panicked. Why in the world would Macintosh have sold the company to Clarion? Well, some of the people who bid on Macintosh never even visited the factory. That's an instant sign they wanted to simply put our name on their products. And Morris and Sidney didn't want that to happen. Clarion had a different idea. Clarion, who built car stereos, wanted Macintosh to build super high-end car stereos that dealers could sell to Mercedes, BMW, Land Rover customers, people who had high-end cars and wanted a sound system in their car as good as their home system. And they wanted to be able to also sell it in Japan, because in Japan, Clarion was very big on car stereo. But in Japan, they don't want things made in Japan. They want things made in the US. So Clarion wanted to expand the Macintosh factory and have it build high-end car stereo. And that's exactly what they did. They bought us our glass cutting machine. They bought us a whole lot of new machinery that made Macintosh better and more efficient. And Macintosh had a line of car stereo. In fact, if you go on eBay right now and you type in Macintosh car stereo, you'll still see people selling those vintage Macintosh car amplifiers, and they sell for a lot of money, typically more than they originally sold for. They're considered collectibles because we actually put PowerGuard, our famous circuit that makes our amplifiers, they don't distort if you overdrive them. They actually had PowerGuard in them. They were real Macintosh amplifiers. Well, the aftermarket for car stereo has died down a bit since then, and Macintosh is now American owned again. And they kind of got out of car stereo for years. but this is new. Macintosh is now back in car audio, and we're partnered with Jeep. We wanted to partner with a company that was an American company building vehicles that were big enough so we could put our quality products in them without having to scale them back down. So the new Jeep Grand Wagoneer, which if you're an old timer like me, was the big top of the line Jeep years ago, is going back in production. I have to tell you, this car is gorgeous. I sat in it. It is absolutely breathtaking inside. And Jeep's also got a new Grand Cherokee L. And L stands for long wheelbase. It's extended so they can have 3 rows of seating in it. When you see a Grand Cherokee L, it doesn't look like a Grand Cherokee that's been made longer. It looks like a Wagoneer, but a little bit shorter. Again, the interior is spectacular. So somehow Jeep and Macintosh got together and decided it's time to offer a Macintosh system. So we are partnering with Jeep. The system in the Wagoneer has 1,350 watts of Macintosh quality power, almost unmeasurable distortion, vanishingly low noise, and power guard. It's got our anti-distortion circuit that's patented and no one else has it. It's got speakers all over the car, including in the ceiling, in the headliner. So it's 3-dimensional sound, and every speaker is individually amplified. Let me restate that because it's so important. Every speaker has its own amplifier. Why did we do that? Well, this is what made our car stereo so good years ago. Our amplifiers, if it was a 6-channel amp, it would have 6 channels of equalization, and the dealer would actually use a microphone and tune each speaker for its location. So if it was near the windshield, that would reflect high frequencies. If it was in the door, it would get bass enhancement. So typically in a car stereo, even if the sum total of the sound is good, you've got highs from here and lows from here and mids from here, and everything has to try to meld into one position. We don't do that. Every speaker is individually amplified and equalized for its location, so every speaker is full range. And it's got a 12-inch subwoofer in that. So the Wagoneer is starting to appear at dealers in the next couple of months. If you're a Mac enthusiast, you just got to visit your Jeep dealer and hear this system. It's absolutely killer. The dashboard you can touch a button and you have blue meters to watch. And it's Macintosh. It's got all our circuitry. Now, with the manufacturing of the car stereo components is done overseas for us. It's done by a company that's had years of experience in building amps that will withstand heat, cold, humidity, dryness, vibration, and all of that. But it's got our patented circuits. So it was a joint venture between this high-end auto stereo company, not Clarion, Macintosh, and Jeep. And it's going to be offered in the Wagoneer and the Grand Cherokee L. We don't offer it in the Grand Cherokee, because, at least at the moment, because the current Grand Cherokee doesn't have room for amps and speakers big enough to give a Macintosh sound. We want this to sound fully like a Mac system, and it's killer. So that's what we've been up to. We've got our new Bluetooth transceiver. We've got our new retro integrated amps. We've got our new top of the line integrated amp with 2 preamp. We've got our home theater processors, including my creation, the MX100, and we've got the new auto stereo components. And that kind of wraps up what's new from us. So I think I'm ready to hand it back.
Actually, Ken, I think we're going to have some Q&A. So we got those questions ahead of time. And I think Emily's going to hop on here and ensure that we get to those. Yep.
We'll do our best on those.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if any of them require maybe some more direct conversation, we can connect, our team here and our client and you, and we can have a conversation after as well.
Got it.
So Jeff submitted a couple questions. First, he wanted to know if there are any plans to release an AVR, not a pre-pro, that would output with internal amplification, 7 bass channels and 6 overheads.
No. So that's an easy one. So the reason why we don't want to build a home theater receiver is for 2 basic reasons. Remember how I said when you buy a Mac amp, you don't have to upgrade? Amps are forever. I mean, you may get the itch to upgrade a Macintosh amp, but I know people who have had the same Macintosh amp since 1972. And, years ago when home theater came out, I used to sell everyone at my store a home theater receiver for $1,000. And then when component video came out, they traded it in for a new 100-watt per channel receiver with that video switching. And when HDMI came out, they traded in for a new 100-watt per channel. And, the problem is you can't build more than 100 watts per channel into a home theater receiver. You can stretch the power rating and say at 2% distortion, but there's a limit to how much power you can build into a receiver. So that's problem 1. Problem 2 is that amps are forever. So you keep trading in every few years this receiver and you keep getting the same amp over and over again. And here's a big one. Home theater processors don't like heat, and amps produce heat. So I'm actually dead set against us ever coming out with a home theater receiver. What I wanted was us to come out with a rack mountable, slim line home theater processor and a matching amp. And then people can every 5 or 10 years, when processors improve, trade in the processor, but they can still keep the amp. So that's what you're going to see from us. I think if they ever come out with a home theater receiver, it'll probably be after I pass away and I'm only 62. So don't hold your breath because I don't want them to do it. Hopefully those are acceptable rationales for why we don't do it.
We appreciate that. The secondary part of that, he said, was, could you provide more than 2 subwoofer outputs on your future AVRs? He was saying you'd personally like to see 6 to 8 sub outputs that could all be controlled by something like Odyssey.
Okay, we will probably eventually have to put more subwoofer outputs on it. I'm not sure if we'll quite go to 6, but we should have more. One of the problems we're running into right now is what we refer to in the engineering department at Mac as real estate, the space on the back panel, because certain jacks need a certain amount of clearance inside. So what's happening is eventually we won't have as many analog inputs on the backs of our home theater processor because people will have fewer and fewer analog inputs. So as old-fashioned jacks can be taken away without losing sales, we can add more of what we want to add. Now, with that said, the MX170, our best processor, when you look at the back of that, it's got a subwoofer output and a second subwoofer output, and then it's got outputs that are labeled aux. And you might have thought those were aux inputs, but it's got aux outputs that can be configured in the setup menu for extra subwoofers or for bi-amplification or a whole lot of other things. So if the MX170 is within reach of you financially, then come into the store and they'll explain how you can use those aux outputs. So we probably give you much of what you need today.
Great. We love to hear that. And of course, like I said in the beginning, financing is available. We can work with you to help make those dreams come true.
Yep.
So
the funny thing is, you just do it right the first time. I'm
Right.
gonna just tell you, I'll spend hopefully only 2 minutes on this. The first piece of Macintosh I ever sold was a Mac 1900 receiver. Guy came in, said, I'm looking for a receiver. I showed him a Kenwood receiver for $3.99. And he said, well, that's really nice. What else do you have? And I showed him a Tandberg receiver for $5.99. And he said, well, that's even nicer. And what else do you have? And I showed him a Macintosh for $7.99. And he said, I'll take it. And that receiver, if he had it today and was selling it on eBay, those sell for, well, now they're going for more than $900. But a few months ago, before we couldn't produce products fast enough, they were selling for about $760. That was in 1972. Do you realize how little it costs that person to own that? You buy a Mac and you can keep it for the rest of your life. I always say, can you imagine if you could say to customers, here's a Macintosh system. And they said, how much is it? Well, it's $20,000. Oh my God, I can't spend $20,000. Well, we have a financing program. And the financing program is you keep it for 40 years and it costs 6.5 cents a day to own it. Who wouldn't buy it, right? So you just do it right the first time.
That's a great point, Ken. Dan, did you have anything to add to that?
No, sign me up for that, Ken. I'll take that.
Okay.
Absolutely. He can hook you up.
I know I just sold my Subaru. I still had 1.5 years on the lease, but Subaru has such good trade-in value. The dealer offered me more than the payoff was on the car. You buy good products from good companies and you can keep them for a long time.
Love it. Yeah. So the next question that we have is from Ed. He said, what products will be shown at, and I don't know if it's AXPONA or Axpona or how you say it, in October. That's I looked it up and I don't remember what it stands for. The Audio Expo North America. There we go. And get in the right order.
Evan, do you know if we're going to Expona?
It's not yet been determined. We're not for sure exhibiting at a manufacturer as I've understood this year at any trade show. I don't believe we're exhibiting as Macintosh at Expona, CEDIA, RMAF, or any shows.
Yep. And the reason why we're doing that, we can't build product fast enough. We have a moratorium on adding new dealers. We've got parts of the country where, dealers have retired and there's a new dealer who's ready to take on the line, and they'll call us and they'll say, I've got the check in my hand. I'm ready to sign up. We're not putting on more dealers and we're not going to most shows, because the last thing we need to do now is have a huge boost in business. It'll just get everyone more angry because it's already taking 2 months to deliver what we have. So we want to grow the company very slightly this year, but not more than we can handle.
No, that makes sense. And so that just gives further reason for folks to come and see us at Paulson's, because we're just emerging as a unicorn in the landscape that you can't find a Macintosh dealer these days. We're just that special. So cool. So the third question was from Rob. He said, when using the MX160 as my main processor, when will there be a fix to use the ARC option? I've been working with tech support and so far it's unsuccessful to resolve.
Yep. So the MX170 has the new video switching and it's all up to date. And the previous MX160 had older video switching, wasn't compatible with everything. Video switching's, I have to tell you, it's always a nightmare for every manufacturer. Sony and LG, every 2 minutes they're coming out with some new video standard, and then everyone has to scramble. And Of course, we don't design our own HDMI video switching boards. Those are done by HDMI designing companies that other companies rely on. I can't answer that question. Chuck at Macintosh, who he probably already knows because he's spoken at tech support, he would have more of a handle on that. So the question boils down to, when will you have an update on software to improve the video switching on a discontinued processor? That would be a question for Chuck. I don't have the answer myself.
Okay, I can try and make sure that Rob has what he needs to be in touch with them. Thank you.
Okay.
Two left here. Looks like we're going to be right at the finish line. So Phil, who is on the call today, he said, who OEMs Macintosh's turntables? And he called out the MT2, MT5, and MT10.
Yes. So we partner with Clear Audio in Germany on those. So Clear Audio has basic things, bearings, motors, and then we work with them to get the product the way we want it. For instance, we want to have very low friction on our platter bearings on the MT5 and MT10. We magnetically levitate our platter on air, so using repelling magnets. And sometimes we want units that are super easy to set up. So they're made for us by Clear Audio in Germany, exactly the way we want it. Every once in a while, someone says, why don't we make them in the factory ourselves? Well, we're an electrical company. Turntables are more about mechanical machining, so we leave it to a company that can do that. And unfortunately, Clear Audio builds for a whole bunch of other high-end companies, and they're running into the same problem we are. They can't build them fast enough.
Man, if anyone was needing some education in supply chain, then I think this time of our lives is giving everyone that education and experience. That's for sure.
Yep. Well, I'll tell you, at Macintosh, what we don't want to do is double the size of the factory tomorrow, because we're afraid that the quality might go down. And we also, we don't know if this is going to keep up forever.
Right.
When COVID hit, everyone's staying at home, and they said, let's upgrade the audio system. But things could change in 5 years. So we'd rather be a big fish in a small pond than I'm not sure. But we want to stay an independently owned American company.
Absolutely. And sustainability is huge. Everyone loves growth, but you see a hockey stick growth, and that can be concerning, because you have to make sure that everything that your brand is known for and everything that's behind that growth is going to continue, which is that quality, that customer experience, all of that. Exactly. So the last set of questions, we got two from William. He said, I have Macintosh ML1C speakers in a live room with lots of glass and tile foot. What integrated amp would you recommend?
Well, ML1s can be driven with as little as 100 watts per channel, but they really sound better when they've got 200 watts per channel. That's when they really come alive. ML1s also could use a little bit of boost in the extreme highs, and they need an equalizer to sound their best. They were designed to be used with an equalizer. So we make an integrated amplifier called the 8900. It has output transformers. It has 200 watts per channel, so it gets them into the club. It's got a built-in equalizer that you can use to boost up the deep bass, so he doesn't need to buy the separate equalizer. And it's got a control for very high frequencies to tweak those speakers. So I would, that's my timer. I would have to say, if budgetable, an MA 8900 might be my first choice for him, or an MA 352 if he likes the retro look.
Awesome. And I actually am a big fan of the 352 because of that look to it. So the second question from William was, again, for that ML1C speakers in that same room, what media streamer do you recommend? MB20, MB50, something else? His objective is to play digital music that is stored in his phone using Bluetooth. And I think, because I was listening, I think I know the answer to this one.
The answer is the MB20.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yep. And he just won't believe how good that's going to sound. And then when people come to visit, they can take all the music that's on their phone and they can stream it right to his system, and he can rediscover new music. Awesome.
Ken, will you go down to the last slide for me, please? That was the end of our questions. I didn't see anything else come in the chat that Evan didn't tackle in the chat itself. So once again, Ken, incredibly informative. I learn something every single time. I don't always understand every single thing that you talk about, but I do learn a ton. And Evan was all over the chat answering questions. Super, super helpful. You two are the dynamic duo when it comes to all things Macintosh, and we're just so grateful for you.
Oh, we're grateful to have you as a longtime dealer, and well, let's do this again.
Definitely.
Yeah, let's get together again sometime. I think in a couple months, we're actually going to be inviting you guys back. I know Evan's going to be with us to talk a little bit about Rotel and Nishi and some of the other offerings that you have under your brand family, which
Wonderful.
will be exciting. Yeah. And then, so for everyone who is with us today, thank you so much for being here. We'll be sending out information shortly on our September webinar, which will be on cutting the cord. So we'll be talking about smart televisions and LG and Sony and Samsung and all of the great offerings that we have, and even some indoor and outdoor options. Dan, did you have anything you would like to send folks off with today?
Oh, no, just say thank you again, everyone, for joining us with our Plugged In with Paulsons. Ken, of course, as always, you're phenomenal. Evan, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing everyone at the next event. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I look forward to it. Bye-bye, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Healthy.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Bye-bye.